average person who doesn't live in and around Washington has no idea what these things are and why you wouldn't want to cut some of the waste from them. Democrats just have a blind spot with Trump. No idea he proposes can be even a good idea. They hate him.
Lickspittle. That was Lickspittle. Chris Cillizza. His parents call him Lickspittle. They've always called him Lickspittle ever since he was a small child. Yeah, that's he's really paying attention now, isn't he? He's got his finger on the pulse of the nation. Democrats. He's a member of the beloved, trusted, vaunted news media. In fact, a fun poll, a new poll out today, came out over the weekend. More Americans trust the Trump administration than trust the media for fair, full, and accurate facts. Now, this is, Michael and I were reading this. I was reading it aloud this morning. I'm like, wait a minute. The American people now trust the government and the Trump administration, the most demonized administration in modern history, probably since the Democrats demonized, Abraham Lincoln the way they did. See how that turned out. Amazing stuff. So YouGov, the poll at YouGov, more Americans trust the Trump administration than trust the media for fair, full, and accurate facts. Pretty amazing stuff. Jamie Ballard writing for today.yougov. A new YouGov survey finds that Americans' trust in the media to state the facts fully, accurately, and fairly is low. Only 29% say that they have a fair amount or a great deal of trust in our corrupt news media. A greater number, 44%, have at least a fair amount of trust in Donald Trump's administration to state facts fully, accurately, and fairly. And reading this aloud to Michael Piercy earlier, and I said, so wait a minute, the American people now trust the government more than the media. And the government they're trusting is the Trump administration, which has been vilified and demonized for more years than most people can even remember. And still, we trust the Trump White House, not just the government, not just the White House, but the Trump White House, fully demonized by the left, by the Democrat, by the corrupt news media. And still, we trust the Trump White House more than the news media. The news media needs to go take a long break in Aspen at the Aspen Institute, and they need to circle their navels for days on end and maybe start talking out loud about how they've lost the trust, the faith, the confidence of the American people so tragically. Our constitutional republic requires a legitimate and effective fourth estate to function properly. And the left has so corrupted our fourth estate. The left has so corrupted our media. It's not just MSDNC and CNN and the Washington Post, although certainly they do their part, and the New York Times and everything else. They also own late-night TV and Saturday Night Live and daytime TV and The View. That's an ABC News product, by the way. ABC News. And who's their chief anchor again? It's George Snuffleupagus. Where did he come from? Big background in journalism? No, he was the one slapping down the bimbo eruptions, along with James Carville, in the Clinton administration, smearing, sliming, and maligning women that came forward to explain the abuse they had suffered at the hands of Bill Clinton and beyond. By the way, see Paula Jones in the hotel room in Little Rock, Arkansas. I went to Little Rock, Arkansas when I was with CNN and covered that story and met with Paula Jones at that hotel where Bill Clinton, but never mind that. That's ABC News. Their chief anchor is George Stephanopoulos, and it's a Democrat Party circle fest, isn't it? Yes, it is. So the new poll finds that only 29% of us have a great deal or a fair amount of trust in the media. 29%, fewer than one-third, on our way to one-quarter of the American people. That many people work in media at this point. 44% have at least a fair amount of trust or a great deal of trust in the Trump administration to state facts fully, accurately, and fairly. Wow. The survey also found that Americans are more likely to see the media's coverage of Trump as too negative than to see it as too positive. Around 4 in 10 believe that the media wants Trump to fail. It should be 10 in 10 believe that, because that is, we'll call it 9 in 10. We'll shave off just a little. Trust in the media is low among Americans. 26% have no trust and confidence at all in the media. Just amazing stuff. 26% no trust or confidence at all in the media. To state the facts fully, accurately, and fairly, I think I'd fall into that category in this poll. You know, what would I know about it? You know, my grandfather, my mother, my stepfather, my brothers, myself, more than 100 years on the air in my family between radio and television. And I think I know a thing or two about all of this. And I, too, have essentially no trust in our media to tell the truth fully and fairly, because they've been so fully corrupted. Republicans are more likely than Democrats to say they have no trust and confidence in the media at all. 35% of Republicans say that we have no trust or confidence in the media at all. And only 13% of Democrats say they have no trust or faith in the media at all. And for the most part, I'll bet they believe that it should be more left-wing, more radical, more political, more dishonest, because the Democrat Party has done a good job of brainwashing a huge swath of the population. It's fun to say swath, isn't it? So 41% of Americans say they don't have very much trust or confidence in the media. And 24% have a fair amount, and only 4% have a great deal of trust in the news media to tell the truth fairly and completely. That's down from 11% who said in 2017, 11% of us said that we had a great deal of trust and confidence in the media. Now that's down to 4%. I'll speak at your conference at the Aspen Institute, and I think that I could do more to help explain to the news media what they're doing wrong than just about anybody on the planet, to be quite humbly honest about the whole thing, but truthfully. So the media coming in with record lows in approval ratings. And the Trump White House, the government, enjoys more trust, confidence, faith from the American people than the news media does. And I've got to say, we're not supposed to trust the government, the state, more than we trust the news media. And that means that news media is really in a tailspin, in a downward spiral. Notice nobody's ever in an upward spiral, but yet we still say downward spiral. Why do we say downward spiral? What other kind of spiral would it be? Don't be silly. 42% of Democrats think that the media's coverage of Trump has been too positive. 42% of Democrats think that the media's coverage of Trump has been too positive. On what burg do they reside? That's pretty amazing stuff. Man, oh, man. 63% of Republicans recognize that the coverage has been too negative. But never mind that. 42% of Democrats think the media's coverage of Trump has been too positive. They just want a lynch mob. They want more guys with rifles out there along the fence line. Pretty amazing stuff. These people, can I tell you? By the way, President Trump is busy doing all kinds of things. He's got the Russians at the table on a ministerial level, a secretarial level, talking about ending the war in Ukraine. Joe Biden did nothing to end the war in Ukraine, didn't have the Russians at the table. There were no negotiations going on. We were just funneling tens of billions to the military-industrial complex to keep them happy. And the military-industrial complex, very, very, very happy with the Biden-Harris administration. But they're not the peacemakers, I don't think. And, we need a strong military-industrial complex, don't get me wrong. Having spent 10 years myself in an office at the Pentagon as a newsman, and the son of a Navy fighter pilot and yada, yada, all that good stuff. But, boy, I'm telling you, our media and President Trump working on hostage. You notice that President Trump came in and this idiotic terrorist process began with Hamas in Gaza and Israel with the troglodyte war against civilization. And now the hostages are being released. Turns out that they've killed most of them because that's what the gargoyles do. That's what the ghouls do. And so the dead bodies are being released. And they murdered little children, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And you saw that they discovered that they were murdered using bare hands. They were karate chopped and beaten the little tiny helpless children and strangled by the troglodytes, the blood-drenched troglodytes from a medieval hell. But the troglodytes are handing over the bodies of the people they've murdered, and they're handing over some living hostages. And that's because of President Trump, and only because of President Trump. The Russians, with their foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, who's been around forever and ever. He's been around since the Soviet days. He's a ruthless Soviet killer. But he's at the table, meeting with our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, talking about ending the war, stopping the killing, withdrawing troops. The discussions are now ongoing, and the news media is furious with the Trump administration. Oh, no, he's making, and they say that he's making promises that he hasn't made, and, oh, Putin gets to keep the parts of Ukraine that he's taken. You know, it's like day one of sitting at the table and negotiating. They're still debating the shape of the table. It's a reference to the Vietnam peace talks, also run by Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, by the way. Republicans getting us out of the war that the Democrats got us into, the Vietnam War. But never mind that. The Democrats, you know, they had presidents on duty when we got into World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. It's their fault we got hit on September 11th, 2001, because their Justice Department under Bill Clinton made sure that the intelligence community couldn't speak to the domestic law enforcement community. They have communities, you know, gated communities. CIA couldn't talk to FBI. If they had, they would have found out about the plot by al-Qaeda and stopped it from happening. Then we wouldn't have had all those wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Never mind that, though. And in the meantime, President Trump has an envoy, Steve Witkoff, and Trump envoy Steve Witkoff seeking extension of Phase 1 of Israel-Hamas ceasefire deal. And he, Steve Witkoff, President Trump's representative, as the envoy, he's headed back to the Middle East. Right? And it looks like he's going to go day after tomorrow back to the Middle East. Now, the Democrats didn't have anybody talking to anyone about anything. There were no peace talks, not with Russia over Ukraine, not with Hamas over hostages and all of that. But now with the peace talks going on, where's the media on this? Well, they're against it. No matter what it's for or who commenced it, they're against it. Peace talks, Trump, if they don't want Trump to bring peace because they think it might help Donald Trump, and they want everything that Donald Trump does to be a disaster. So they're working on making everything a disaster because that will serve the interests of the Democratic Party, they believe. Isn't that amazing? Sad but true. Womp, womp, womp. And we remain at 888-630-9625. You know that this great country of ours was built on hard work. And whether you're somebody that stands long hours running errands, walking, just being on your feet all day to keep the world turning, you shouldn't have to deal with fatigue and foot pain and ankle and knee pain and back pain. And that's where G-Defy shoes come in. G-Defy shoes, built with patented VersaShock technology. The FTC has authorized G-Defy to tell you that these shoes help to relieve minor occasional pain associated with walking, running, prolonged standing. G-Defy shoes help to absorb harmful shock, align your body, improve your biomechanics, and return energy with every step that you take. My best girl and I, we have pairs of G-Defy shoes that they got us, and they make your arches feel better after a walk than they felt before your walk. Right now, you can get 50% off your order of $120 or more by texting Chris, that's me, to 91888, 91888, CHRIS, or you can head to Al Gore's Amazing Internet to Getify.com, use the code Chris there, and you're going to save 50%. Great stuff. With Getify's 60-day risk-free trial, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Message and data rates may apply. Yes, sir. Yeah. And we got crazy sanctuary people in Boston, Massachusetts. Wait till you hear what these crazy people are saying about rounding up illegal alien gang members.
We are now about 498 hours into Trump's second term. No promised peace deal in place.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at WashingtonTimes.com/Chris. Yeah, and Elon Musk continues his work apace, impeded by the Democrats at every possible turn because they want more government, more debt. They want the fast track to bankruptcy for the United States of America because they're not on our side. That's one of the things about them. Not on our side, kind of a problem. And there's that Volodymyr Zelensky fellow, too. Democrats, they're completely crazy. And this Democrat Senator, Tina Smith, calling Elon Musk all kinds of names that I can't even use on the radio here because of FCC regulations. It's amazing stuff. But this Democrat Senator calling Elon Musk a D word, a slang term, a four-letter word describing the male appendage, and pretty remarkable stuff, I've got to say. We're also hearing now that Vivek Ramaswamy is going to run for governor of Ohio. Vivek, who was going to take a job in the administration, looks like now he's going to run for governor. There was talk of him running for senator in Ohio, but now it looks like he's going to run for governor of Ohio. Mike DeWine, the governor there, term limited, will be finishing up his time as governor. And Vivek Ramaswamy, very smart, very capable man with a brilliant future in America and in politics. He's already got a brilliant past as well because he's been an incredibly successful American young businessman. Great stuff going on there. Cuts coming at the Defense Department, and the Democrats, they're like, suddenly they want to defend defense spending. Suddenly they're, no, we need to spend more at the Pentagon. We need more fuel the military-industrial complex. They couldn't be bigger hypocrites if they set out to become bigger hypocrites. Got that and some great audio for you coming up. And Boston, they love their illegal alien gang member criminals loose on the streets because, Democrats, they love crime. The problem is not our guns, it's your sons. Stop raising criminals. Just a thought. Let's going to get audio very shortly. Right now, let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Connor, calling from Huntsville, Alabama. Connor, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, Chris. Before I get started, I got to tell you, whoever pulls up your movie clips is genius. I filed the one from Blazing Saddles last week under movies that you cannot make anymore.
That's a fact.
And one other thing, Bernie Sanders sounds so much like the ant at the aardvark. The aardvark out of that old cartoon from 30, 40 years ago. Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. But
it's good. It's good that you keep the news funny, at least in your own mind. And it really is. Well, it's good. And you should make fun of everything that happens because it's much better than any available alternative.
It does. But I find it interesting that several of Trump's picks have either seen the deep state up close as a third party or have been done over by the deep state. those people know what rocks to turn over, and so it's going to be interesting to see how all that unfolds.
I agree completely, and that's why I've got to say I know former Congressman Matt Gaetz from Florida a bit, and we were talking about making him Attorney General. He's a guy that was targeted by the corrupt Justice Department for political reasons and was dogged by them and then investigated by the Democrats in Congress, who eventually dropped everything because when they looked into it, they saw there wasn't enough there to continue to pursue. And I was looking forward to Matt Gaetz, who, again, I like personally, and I've done television with him at Newsmax and so on, and I was looking forward to him. But you're right, Tulsi Gabbard, to name one, right, Connor? And hopefully Dan Bongino, if Dan Bongino takes a job as deputy director at the FBI, which is out there all over the place today, that would be huge. Kash Patel as director of the FBI, huge. The FBI needs a big shakeup, a big house cleaning, and the Justice Department too. But you're right. President Trump is putting people in key positions who recognize that we, the American people, have lost faith in our public institutions, from the FBI and the Department of Justice to the intelligence community and beyond. The IRS was used by the Obama-Biden administration to target the political enemies of the Democrat Party. And in the end, we, the taxpayers, had to fork over millions of dollars to Tea Party groups and patriot groups because the Obama IRS targeted the political enemies of the Democrat Party. And they were successful in sidelining groups that had the word patriot in their title. They know that no Democrat groups have the word patriot in their title, or the Tea Party groups, because they love and enjoy and appreciate the founding of the United States of America, so they call themselves Tea Party groups. And the Democrat Party said, well, anybody with Tea Party in their name, we're going to target them with the IRS and sideline them. Anybody with the word patriot, any organization with the word patriot in their title, we're going to target them and sideline them. And the Democrats have abused and again, millions of dollars they won the lawsuit. These groups did, patriot groups and Tea Party groups, and millions of dollars awarded by the courts because it was so flagrant and obvious that the Obama IRS targeted the political enemies of the Democrat Party. And nobody went to jail. Nobody was punished in any way. But the taxpayers had to fork over millions of dollars to the patriot groups and Tea Party groups because of the corruption. The FBI, they've targeted the political enemies of the Democrat Party. They put people in jail. Peter Navarro, that just like for months, but it's like, you refuse a congressional subpoena because you claim executive privilege. You work for the president. Your conversations with the president are confidential. The Democrats are just trying to raise Cain. There's an update on that, too, because General Raisin Cain is going to come in, apparently, as President Trump has talked about him many times, meeting him in Iraq and about smashing ISIS. And Raisin Cain, General Cain, is, President Trump is a fan of General Cain, and President Trump has dismissed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. You may remember the last chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Obama and Biden chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was on the phone with Communist China's top general, General Lee. Ironically, the Democrat Party and General Lee go back a long way. The Democrats have a long history with General Lee and the Confederate States of America and Jefferson Davis, but never mind that. And I'll get back to the Joint Chiefs of Staff thing because that's, it's such a big deal that it was fine when Barack Obama did the same thing times 10, but now President Trump does it 10%, and the news media loses their stuff, as they so often do. Amazing, amazing stuff. Well, Connor, you're right about President Trump's picks to head up departments and agencies, and their personal experience of having been abused by our own government will serve them well in these posts. Right, Connor?
Well, I think so. And lastly, they aren't beholden to any of these institutions that they're going to be joining. They can go walk away and be completely successful on their own. So I think that's a big plus.
You're absolutely right, of course. And that's another thing about Elon Musk. He's not beholden to anyone because he's obviously self-sufficient. He ought to be able to pay his bills for the rest of his life. given that he's worth $394.2 billion, and the 0.2 is $200 million. I think he's okay, and he's not beholden to anybody. And libs, I got a haircut on Saturday, and the haircutter lady that I've been going to for years went off on Saturday about, they're firing people that have worked so hard for so many years. I'm like, you must be getting your news from MSDNC. Firing people that are probationary people that were hired less than a year ago. They haven't even taken their positions. They're still probationary training period. But never mind that. But the Democrats, they get everybody upset. She's a Democrat voter, it would be fair to say, the woman that cuts my hair. And I like her, and I don't care what her politics are. But she was going crazy about how terrible Trump is getting government people fired who have worked for 30 years, and now they've been fired, and, that's not happening. But I did explain, that the Washington Post is laying people off right now. The NBC News laying people off right now. CNN laying people off right now. That we got Mark Zuckerberg laying people off. I think 4% of his workforce, thousands and thousands of people. And, of course, Barack Obama laid off lots. Of course, Bill Clinton laid off thousands and thousands of people, hundreds of thousands when he was president, and he was applauded for it. Trump lays off a fraction of that, and the left is going bat guano crazy, and they have no memory of anything that happened day before yesterday or earlier than that. Amazing stuff. Connor, thank you, buddy. Thanks for being an American and for paying attention and for being well-informed and for caring, unlike so many people that call themselves Democrats. So thanks, Connor. All right, now, Michael, let's go to some audio here, because one of the big changes that we learned about just last night, and the media is going guano about this already, and that is Dan Bongino being named to become the deputy director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI. And the media, they're very upset about that because he might be identifiably conservative. He's former federal law enforcement, Secret Service agent. He was on the Barack Obama protective detail, among other duties that he had as a federal law enforcement officer and special agent, Secret Service, and all that good stuff. And he was a member of the NYPD before he went with the U.S. Secret Service. And now he will move to the FBI and become the deputy director of the FBI. And that is a big deal, and that is a good thing. And it's a big shakeup in the radio business, too, of course. But at CNN, they're out to get anybody. If anybody's named as a new member of the Trump administration, then CNN, just like almost all of the rest of the media, they're out to get him. They're out to smear. And then, like the woman that cuts my hair, she'll be saying, Dan Bongino, and then she'll say something that's not true, because that's what CNN does, and that's what MSDNC does, and that's what the Washington Post does, and the rest of them. But CNN, they've got a woman named Sarah Seidner. Sarah Seidner is her name. And this morning on CNN, they heard Dan Bongino be taking a job at the FBI as a former Secret Service and NYPD officer, and that cannot be allowed.
Donald Trump is not done with the shock and awe of all this stuff. We just got word that Dan Bongino, who is known as a right-wing podcaster, he is a former law enforcement officer, but he has never worked at the FBI, has been tapped to be in leadership at the FBI, which is actually something that goes against the FBI director, Trump's own pick. What is happening here?
Well, let them sort that out, because that's not really in your lane, Sarah Seidner. You're not bright enough to sort this stuff. And I've seen other media refer to him as a podcaster, and he does have a podcast, a very successful podcast. Also has a very successful radio show in the old Rush Limbaugh time slot from noon until 3 p.m. Eastern time. And that's broadcast radio. But when you're in cable, I guess you don't recognize broadcast. You don't want to be promoting. They might think they're promoting it. He's a podcast. Oh, he's also former federal law enforcement, but not FBI. So listen to the defenders of the bureaucracy, the dim-witted Sarah Seidner, condemning the pick of a former Secret Service agent because he wasn't FBI. The media knows that the bureaucracy must nurture itself. It must feed on its own lifeblood, because at the news media, defenders of the bureaucracy and of the state, deep and otherwise. Then CNN had a Mark Preston person on. And you heard the indignation in Sarah Seidner's voice. Not even FBI. Really? You got to, okay. Should every Secretary of State be a career State Department person? Should every, shall I go on? Defense Secretary and I don't know. You remember Barack Obama chose penitentiary face John Brennan to be CIA director. He was a career intelligence officer, but they picked him because he voted for the Communist Party candidate for president, Gus Hall. That's really sums it up there. But on CNN, they got a person named Mark Preston.
First of all, we shouldn't be surprised that Dan Bongino is in the Trump administration, an incredibly vocal supporter of President Trump, one of the biggest podcasters right now in the nation. President Trump even acknowledges how much Bongino was willing to give up his podcast to go work for the government.
He was willing to give up his podcast and his national radio show, nationally syndicated radio show, which they like to leave away. Is that because they're ignorant and they just don't know? They just read one paragraph on it, and now they're angry, and their indignation is gushing off of the television screen. He's been an incredibly vocal supporter of President Trump, along with 77 million other people, none of whom you know. It's another classic case. Mark Preston couldn't believe Donald Trump won because nobody he knows voted for him. A little New York Times reference there. Mark Preston.
We are told now by the FBI Agents Association that they were told by Kash Patel, the new FBI director, that this position, this number 2 position in the FBI, would remain with a career FBI agent, not a political appointee, not one of Donald Trump's agents that are put in from the outside, but it would be somebody who had a long career there. Apparently, over the weekend, there was a dust-up about giving information about FBI agents and other DOJ officials who participated in the investigation of Donald Trump on January 6th. They were not given this information by these career FBI agents, and guess what? They don't have the position. Dan Bongino will take the role and is not a Senate-confirmed position, so Dan Bongino can start today.
Well, you got the all clear from CNN. Thanks for that. You mopping up that for us. Pretty amazing stuff. Yeah. You got it all sorted out at CNN. They says the anchor lady. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Good Morning America. CNN, they were all over it. Good Morning America, where George Snuffleupagus, who is best known for being a Clinton administration official, Democrat. He was a Capitol Hill staffer, then a Democrat presidential campaign staffer. Bill Clinton campaign, then a Bill Clinton White House staffer, and he helped slap down the women that came forward. He smeared them and slandered them, accusing Bill Clinton of sexual abuse. Good Morning America, George Snuffleupagus.
Meantime, Rachel, new deputy director designee for the FBI, Dan Bongino, right-wing podcaster, election denier.
Yep, he has pushed false claims about the 2020 election, conspiracy theories about January 6th, and the president announcing that Dan Bongino will now serve as second command in the FBI. This really sends a strong message and a signal about the way that the FBI will now be reshaped. Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, 2 of the harshest critics, they will now be leading the department. George.
Neither with any experience at the FBI. Okay, Rachel, thanks very much.
Yeah, just Secret Service, career at the Secret Service and NYPD, and that's pretty amazing stuff. And election denier, I love the election denier part.
You can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
Ah, yes. Well, if she were made the deputy director of the FBI by the Biden-Harris administration, George Stephanopoulos would applaud. They wouldn't identify her as an election denier. Hey, where's Stacey Abrams? Is she plowing through that $2 billion that Joe Biden gave her? These people. Yeah, that's right. It was a Pauline Kael reference. And Pauline Kael, New York Times, long time ago, couldn't believe Richard Nixon won because she said, no one I know voted for him. And that's what goes on all day, every day in our media today. They're all the offspring, the spawn of Pauline Kael from the New York Times. Aren't they amazing? Womp, womp, womp. They literally don't know anyone that voted for him. Not in the newsroom, not at home, not where they go out to dinner.
In fact, someone outside asked if I'm ever getting to see. The answer is no.
Not one of our regular music beds here, but we just learned that Roberta Flack, the great Roberta Flack, has died at the age of 88, killing me softly with his song and First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, among others, but truly one of the greats of her generation, of her time, and it was a great time. Something I had not known is that Roberta Flack became an overnight sensation in the early 1970s because Clint Eastwood used her song, The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, in his movie Play Misty for Me. Play Misty for Me. First Time Ever I Saw Your Face, and that's when Roberta Flack's career really took off. Clint Eastwood, he's the power. The power. Let's grab a quick call. We don't have a ton of time, but let's go to Nick calling from Chicago on line 4. Nicholas, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah, I haven't been called Nicholas for a long time, except by the judge. She called me Nicholas, but let's not go there. Thank you. That actually is a joke, okay?
Sure.
Really. Made my nose grow bigger. But I thank you for being so clear about your time on the airways with this Ukrainian thing, because about the worst people politically, not that Hitler and the fascists and the Nazis were good people, but the worst ones were Stalin and before him Mao Zedong. And my parents, you see, came from Ukraine. My father was Ukrainian. My mother was Polish from Western Ukraine. And they both lived through Stalin's famine of the early 1930s. It was punishment against the Ukrainian people for wanting to be independent.
Yeah. Yeah, and they murdered millions and millions of Ukrainians. The commies, the commies are the biggest killers in history. And Hitler was the Socialist Workers' Party of Germany.